Leo, this is your week ahead astrology forecast by Astrology Motivation from Born Without Boundaries. In these weekly videos, I review the major planetary aspects and transits and how they impact your natal sun and what that means for your bottom line. All you need to know to enjoy these videos is your birthday. That's it. Everything else I will translate for you so you will easily understand what's going on. I'm going to start out really broad with the big stuff, and then I'm going to focus down into Leo's specific energy, and then I'll break things down into the 3 decans of Leo. A decan is a group of 10 degrees, so that I will be able to pinpoint how your natal suns, based on their position in Leo, which I will translate into birth dates for you, are being impacted by the other planets and major transits. And that's how you'll know how your life is going to be impacted. So let's start out with the big stuff, Leo, shall we? Now remember, this is for July 28th through August 3rd of 2023. It says it already in the thumbnails and down below in the title. This is a weird time. I can't, like, this is just a weird time. And no, even looking at the charts, I can't really put my finger on it. And I think it's because Uranus is so, it's so active right now that there's no way that there's not going to be some surprises. Like, curveballs are Uranus's specialty. Do you know what I'm saying? So you can feel it, and you can feel like it's like there's already been something that's popped off. It just hasn't been exposed yet, and the exposure is coming over the next couple of weeks, especially because right now, this week, Mercury is going to be in opposition to Saturn. So there's challenge, knowledge versus status quo, rules, laws, regulations based, challenging what we can say, what we can do, what we can talk about, or even what we know. So this could be some forced revelation of information when logic has to challenge the status quo, right? On August 1st, there's going to be a full moon in Aquarius, which means just constant, like, the feeling and emotion and concern that is building in the community, about community. And since the North and South Node now are in the energies of the duality of the partnership, which is Libra, and that's the South Node, versus individuality, and that's Aries, and that's the North Node. This sense of the meta consciousness of Aquarian energy, the good of all, but something's bursting around there. So there's a huge energy release on this full moon about sort of truth for maybe humans at large. This full moon happens also square to Jupiter, where the sun is all week long is square to Jupiter. So there's some intensity about, like, I want to move forward, I want to push forward, but maybe we don't even know what we're pushing through. It's that kind of energy. Venus is also square to Uranus all week, which makes us have these tendencies toward wanting to rebel and try something different instead of just because it's different, just because it's not the norm. So there could be a lot of stuff that's thrown in the air this week that ends up not something that we end up keeping, but it just makes a lot of mayhem and chaos. It's kind of like a Midsummer Night's Dream, especially because Mercury for the first 2 days of this week is conjunct to Venus and square to Uranus. So there's craziness everywhere. Surprise texts, surprise interactions, surprise flirtations, stuff that may even make you surprise yourself just because we're tired of the norm. But that doesn't mean it's gonna be something permanent. But then again, if you've watched that play, A Midsummer Night's Dream, it might be permanent. It might be everything's being tossed into the air right now because we need it being topsy-turvy. It's like we may need to be turned on our heads to actually understand things right now. So it is kind of a crazy time. There's a lot of mayhem. I don't think something bad is coming, but I think something game-changing is. We also have Mars finally out of opposition with Saturn. That was a tough one, right? Mercury, I'd rather have Mercury opposite Saturn than Mars opposite Saturn because it's not as depressing and it's more objective. especially with what's going on. So it may get pissed off and feel repressed, especially in expression, in the way we express ourselves. But at the same time, it has that objectivity to be like, okay, well, let me articulate why this isn't working and why this isn't smart. Sort of a frustration of, we don't have anything set up. What do you expect me to go on? Well, you kind of got to go on nothing, right? You got to kind of learn to improvise whether you're comfortable with it or not. Mars is trine to Jupiter, so anything that we push forward with, anything that we take initiative on, has blessings that are coming right now. And this square to the sun could be agitating us and challenging us just enough. It's like, I want to grow, but I can't grow, so I got to take action. Because it's almost like it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. It's kind of that energy. This is, oh my God. It's kind of a shit show you can't take your eyes off of, is what it is. So let's go to Leo specific energy, shall we? How do I do that? Well, I look at what's going on in Leo, the zodiac sign, and then I look at what's going on with your ruling dignitary, the sun. So the sun is in Leo. It's going to move between 5 and 11 degrees this week. At 9 degrees, at around like 12:30, 12:50 Pacific time. So I don't know what that is all the other times. Please translate it for me, guys. It's been a long week. Is at 9 degrees. When the sun is at 9 degrees and the moon is at 9 degrees Aquarius, sun is at 9 degrees Leo. It's around 12:50 PTS, or Pacific time. That's California time. I think that translates into like 2:50 out here where I am in Austin. That means around 3:50 Eastern time. I don't know if you needed me to do that for you, but that's when the full moon happens. So here in the States, we're not gonna, when the moon is at its fullest, we're not going to see it, though the night before and that night you're still going to get a beautiful, hopefully you get a beautiful view of the full moon. And then Venus is in retrograde in Leo. It's going from 27 degrees to 25 degrees this week. And it is conjunct, when we begin this week, it is conjunct Mercury. And all week long, it is going to be square to Uranus. So there could be major tumultuous craziness going on in our love lives. Acting out of the ordinary. That's definite. Let's break things down then, what the sun is doing. Well, I already said the sun is moving between 5 and 11 degrees Leo. It is square to Jupiter, which means there is tension. It's optimistic tension, but there's tension. There's a sense of being too big for our britches and wanting to move too fast and go too quickly because we feel challenged and we feel restricted. So there is that optimism, but there also is that pressure point. The sun is also opposite the moon, creating a full moon on the 1st. We already talked about that. That's in Aquarius. And all week long, the sun is square to Jupiter, meaning that this full moon is going to be square to Jupiter too. The fact that the sun and the moon are in direct opposition of each other and square to Jupiter really tends to highlight tension and stress between who we think we are and what we feel. And major emotions are going to have to be released, especially because Jupiter is involved, and Jupiter makes everything more dramatic and bigger. This could also be impacting us some sort of global change as well. Just an FYI. Okay, so how does this impact you? If you know that your natal sun is between 0 and 9 degrees Leo, you are a Leo 1 because your natal sun is in the first decan of Leo. This correlates to birthdays that are basically July Leos. Yeah, this is if you're on the cusp of Cancer. So anywhere from July 22nd through July 31st, you are Leo 1s. This week, your natal suns are going to be conjunct the current sun, which does breed energy. It brings energy. It brings certainty, security, a self-esteem, and a need for attention, but also naturally getting attention. Your natal suns are also opposite the moon, especially August 1st during the full moon. So there you are, right there. This is going to be a powerful full moon for you. can be extremely emotional, especially with regards to the crowds or clubs or groups that you belong to. Caring about the public versus caring for yourself and what's important to you. Energies that have to be released around there. Your natal suns are semi-square to Mars, which could put a kibosh on the ability to feel like you can move forward. There could be some extra strain, or just maybe even just not feeling as energized as you normally would. And especially if you are born between like July 31st or August 1st, maybe even the 1st or 2nd, you are in a tight opposition to that full moon, which means it's going to be especially impactful and high pressured for you. Am I doing what's right for everybody else? That kind of energy and any kind of emotion that's built up around that has to be released at that time. And of course, your natal sun, yeah, and that's what I wanted to say. Leo 2s. So, okay, yeah, Leo 2s. If your natal suns are between between 10 and 19 degrees Leo, you guys are Leo 2 because your sun falls in the second decan of Leo. This translates to anybody born between August 1st and the 10th. And that can toggle a little bit depending on the year, but it's in and around there. Your natal suns all week long are square to Jupiter. Now I know I said, so why are Leo 1s not square to Jupiter? Well, the truth is, if you are at the very end of Leo 1, so you're at like, let's say the 31st of July, 31st of July, you guys are actually square to Jupiter. Absolutely. So all week long, you could have been feeling, definitely for the past couple of weeks when Jupiter had just entered the second decan of Leo, you could definitely still be feeling this almost nonsensical optimism and need to push forward. And in this full moon, it will be especially challenging for you, and it'll be especially emotional for you. Absolutely. But it's all of you guys in Leo 2 that are in this, that are anywhere between 10 and 19 degrees Leo. Your natal suns are in a square to Jupiter. And that means personally, you feel like you want to grow beyond what you're growing, what you currently have. And that could also lead you to a almost ruthlessness in a way that kind of makes you not think through things the way that you should. So it's best in this energy to keep your optimism, but at the same time, keep your feet grounded, especially ground yourself right now. Like put your feet in the earth, take a breath before you make a decision. All of these things are really smart strategies to make sure that you are using your logic and not just your impulsivity. Just an FYI, because your natal suns are also in a long-term trine to Chiron, especially those of you born around the 9th or 10th of August. So there is that sense of, I want to heal. I want to learn from the past. And this could be exacerbating it right now as I'm ready to show that I'm making changes and I've learned from the past. I'm ready to make things right or make my life right. So all of those things are going to be really intense. Those energies and those emotions are going to be really intense this week. Just an FYI. For Leo 3s, if you know your natal sun is between 20 and 29 degrees Leo, you are a Leo 3s. This correlates to August 11th through the 21st birthdays, maybe up to the 22nd, depending on the year. Your natal suns are conjunct to Venus, and Venus is in retrograde. So there's a lot of heart stuff and emotion stuff and a sense of value, like who am I? How am I valued? Do I look good? How do I feel about my aesthetics? Am I attractive? This sense of romancing that you might be thinking back on. It's not necessarily like calling your exes, but there is that sense of maybe I missed something that I should have valued. That kind of energy. And that's going to stay with you for quite some time. Just an FYI. Because Venus is conjunct to you guys. Venus is going to be in the third decan of Leo at least through next week. So we have, I don't know the exact dates, I apologize guys, but you also have a square to Uranus, which means that there could be a lot of tumultuousness going on in your romantic relationships because you don't want the status quo anymore, and you're tempted, very much tempted outside of it, especially in the beginning of this week, the 28th, 29th, when Mercury is still kind of conjunct Venus. You could be tempted over the internet. So this is something to be particularly aware of, right? And then we have this trine to the North Node, which is for the next 6 months, and sextile to the South Node, which is the more for the next 6 months. So over the next 6 months, especially when it comes to relationships and partnerships, and this could be catalyzed right now this week because of actions taken, because of that conjunction to Venus square Uranus, there's going to be a lot of shifts when it comes to your priorities in your relationships versus who you are independently. And all of this tension could be that you feel like you need to break free. Maybe you felt too restricted or confined by the relationship that you're in. Just an FYI. We also have a long-term quincunx to Pluto, which means the changes that are going to be happening over the next year or so are going to be catalyzed by discomfort and like an unpleasant agitation or frustration underneath the skin. There is that sense of wanting to get things done and having an energy about you that feels like you're just under a lot of pressure and you need to get that pressure relieved. So this week I would say predict for the next 6 months, it is really all about that pressure or that struggle between those nodes, between your individual identity and your partnership, and how to recalibrate and balance that stuff out. You let me know in the comments below, Leo, how all this is impacting you personally. Please don't forget to like this video, share it if you really love it, and definitely subscribe to this channel if you haven't subscribed yet. After you do all that, I'm going to ask you to do one more thing, and that's to come on over to Born Without Boundaries Tarot for your week ahead tarot card message. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the videos.